Good evening. We're just here tonight in Castlebar, County Mayo. We're at the Mall, and we've just listened through to a ceremony that took place just on the green here behind me, where a large number of politicians and employees of the Mayo County Council. If you want to just turn the camera around there, you'll see where we are. This is the Mayo County Council, Áras an Contae, the headquarters. And a lot of the employees, we had John Condon, Director of Services, we had other employees who brought together an event here for us. There were also a lot of politicians, supposed to be for the people of Mayo. Now, there were a lot of politicians present here as well today. We had TDs, we had councillors, etc. And they're here for a National Day of Remembrance and Reflection. And this was heavily advertised over the last few days and weeks on the local radio and indeed on the national radio and television. We had a ceremony to pay tribute to all who helped to tackle the virus and to remember all those who died during the pandemic. Now, I just want to point out a few things about this today. First of all, there's nobody here. So that's the first thing. So there's a large number of politicians, there's TDs, there's councillors, there's state employees, but the one thing that's missing is the public. So there's nobody here.
And this is the representative here from the Mayo County Council who gave the address.
As you can see there, there's various members of the council just making their way back into the building now after running this event. So it was organised by the government.
The councillors actually down here who we've been calling upon all year. Michael Kilcoyne, Alan Dillon.
So we have Blackie Gavin in the red jacket. We have Michael Kilcoyne in the black hat. We have the last Catherlock is walking around as well. We also have Alan Dillon of Fine Gael. He's speaking with a local Fianna Fáil councillor, and we also have Dara Calleary of Fianna Fáil here as well. That's just to name a few.
Josiah, we also have the local priest who stood up and prayed, but we have called upon these people to go and represent the people. The people they're supposed to be the spiritual guides of, and we haven't heard a peep out of them in the past 2 years.
So we've just come through 2 years of carnage in this country. Thousands have died. We have 6,600 people dead. We've heard the horrific, grotesque stories from nursing homes where elderly people were left to die, and worse. We've heard the stories over and over again from Mayo University Hospital here in Castlebar, where the staff were gagged in March 2020 by Catherine Donoghue. Now, that was read out on Midwest Radio. The letter gagging the staff was read out. RTE reported on it. Every single councillor in this building knows that the staff were gagged. They've read the letter. They know all about it. Spent months trying to get these councillors to simply ask the question as to why the staff are gagged, and not a single one of them raised their hand, used their position, did what they are paid to do, to find out why elderly, vulnerable people are going into that hospital and they're being dealt with by a gagged staff, and why the entire population of Mayo is afraid to go to hospital because they've heard so many stories about people who were carried out in coffins, who went in relatively healthy. And just to be very clear and simple about it, the people who are gagging the staff, the people who are refusing to investigate that, the politicians who are overlooking the orchestration of death, are now putting the flag at half-mast. If you want to turn the camera around there, you'll see the flag is at half-mast. So that's all we need to do. That's all we need to do. So we can have a gagged staff, we can have death, we can have carnage, we can have people dying in awful circumstances, but as long as we put the flag at half-mast, everything's going to be okay. And the reason we're here today with a few posters is simply to register a protest against that, because that is gravely wrong and unjust.
Yeah, and we would just reiterate again our stance. It remains exactly the same. 2 years ago, we went to the Garda station over there. We went on Garda Síochána after hearing the horrendous story of Sally Maz, a young 17-year-old girl who was taken into Mayo University Hospital and who was sent home, admitted and then sent home after a week, and sent home in great pain. And obviously the staff, knowing well that she would be brought back again within a few days, and where she would die 2 to 3 weeks later. And then we are told that this girl died of COVID. Now, right across the country, our elderly went to their deaths. They were given midazolam and fentanyl and other drugs that sedated them and brought about their deaths. And we are calling again today, 2 years later. I would call for the very same thing. We need criminal investigations by An Garda Síochána into our hospitals and nursing homes. Set up in 1923, An Garda Síochána, the guardians of the peace, the protection of the people. And we need An Garda Síochána to protect the vulnerable, the elderly, who are in our nursing homes and in our hospitals. It is not right, it is wrong, it is simply wrong that the people of this county and the people of this country are at this stage afraid to go into their hospitals.
Something new that came out in the inquest, it's a sham inquest overseen by Patrick O'Connor. Nonetheless, some interesting truths did come out, and one of them was that Sally Maz palliative care was initiated the day after she presented to the hospital. So she's young, she's full of life and hope for her future. She wanted to be a doctor, and she has plans for her life, and she has a medical condition since a child that she has miraculously survived and thrived through. And she's coming into the hospital, and the day after she arrives, the palliative care team is assembled and put into action, and the family were never told up to the day of her death that the palliative care team were involved. Decision made that this girl is going to die. So this is why we're here today. This is wrong. It's incredibly serious, and of course we're thinking of all the other people who died, the elderly, the vulnerable, who had no one to speak for them, who were put on the palliative, the COVID pathway, as they say, which is essentially a one-way street to an untimely end. And we're seeing that clearly now, and that's why we're protesting here today, because what we have here on the Mall in Castlebar is simply a whitewash of all of that and a desire to cover it up, and it's not acceptable.
Yes, and I just want to read out here the words of the Taoiseach. He's not really keen on an inquiry. Now, the people, the families of those who lost their loved ones at Dalga, where 29 elderly went to their deaths within a few days, as far as I know. 29 people. And those families are still looking for answers. Then we have Caracalla in Clare, where the residents, the most vulnerable in our society, were in effect, they were abandoned. The staff walked out, they were abandoned, left to die. Then we have Ballyknoe, where terrible abuse happened, terrible abuse. And our Taoiseach has come out. He's not keen on an inquiry. But he said whatever inquiry, whatever form it takes, what he wants it to do is to evaluate how we did as a country and learn lessons. So in other words, no accountability, nobody is to blame. And yet we have the elderly massacred in these nursing homes and hospitals. And the Taoiseach, no interest in an inquiry. What a disgrace. What a disgrace.
Yeah. And yet we're supposed to gather together today on his orders to remember what happened and to reflect. And I suppose, you know, people know a con job when they see one, and they know a setup when they see one, and that's why the people of Mayo are not here today.
Yes.
And that's why I would stress that this was advertised all over the media, the local papers, the local radio stations, pumping it out, and there's no one here today. Because people know the setup when they see one, and when it involves the deaths of so many innocent, vulnerable people, it's egregious and it's criminal.
And as far as I know, he's come out from his hideout there in the US, where he's locked up in a room somewhere. He's come out today and he's made a statement. He said the healthcare workers deserve the nation's deep gratitude and respect. Now I wonder, does he include there the healthcare workers who walked out and left the elderly in Dalgan, in Ballynoe, Caracalla? Does he include those who left the elderly to die? What an absolute disgrace. A man removed from reality. And the truth will come out. The truth will come out. We do thank God for the agency staff who were called in to Caracalla and got in touch with RT Investigates, and they have spoken out. Whistleblowers come out there and they have spoken of the horrendous scenes in that place and how they were told not to answer the bell when it rang. They've spoken of the abuse and the state of these elderly, and how they were told when they ring the bell, looking for help, looking for assistance, ignore it, do not answer it. That is the truth about our nursing homes and our hospitals. And we need protection. We need the guards to protect the public. That is their job. And that includes those, the most vulnerable, the sick, the elderly, the dying, in Mayo University Hospital and every other hospital across the country, and in our nursing homes. Those who are lying on their beds, scarred, wounded, dehydrated, sedated, left to die, abandoned. The guards need to investigate if there is criminal activity. This is nonsense here today, and thank God the people of Mayo have more sense. They didn't come out. They have more sense. There's nobody here today, only the councillors, politicians, county councillors, and so on and so forth.
So we'd encourage you, finally, just when you open the papers this week and you see the pictures, because you will see them, and you see the pictures of the politicians and then the council staff, and you see those on your papers, that you would know what happened here today, that there was no public here today, that there was no support from the people of Mayo today, that the sole reason for this organised event today was for the politicians to get their picture in the paper.
Yes.
And you know, and it's a low thing for the most for the little things, you know, for the road and for the potholes. But when it involves life and death, it's a serious thing in the sight of God. And we'd encourage you to remember that now this week, and to fight for what's right and to fight for the truth in all of these things. Now, we have learned in recent days that there's an audit underway investigating 12 million euros of taxpayers' money that was given to nursing homes over the last 2 years, and it was meant to be as a support for them during that time. For example, if they needed more staff or more equipment so that they could protect the elderly, make sure they were protected, and you know, that their needs were met. But of course, we've learned now, and the reason there's an audit is that it has been revealed that 12 million euros was spent on vouchers, one-for-all vouchers. Now, I can assure you that wasn't for the elderly.
No.
Now, the elderly are locked in. They're not spending the one-for-all vouchers. They're going to the staff that we're supposed to stand here today and plant trees and clap for, and we're not going to do that. And I suppose the politicians know this, and that's why it makes it more egregious that they're here today, willing to stand by, willing to engage in this charade, with the public not participating.
It's an absolute lie.
They're organising this charade. It's serious, it's wrong, and that's why we're here today. We maintain this presence at the event.